Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of We Watch Shudder, the first new episode in, 5 days. Man, that was, that's a whole, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
It's still Michelle, even after all this time. Man,
Yay.
Did you guys listen to the podcast in October? A whole bunch of you did. Thank you guys so much.
I listened.
Yeah, I did too. It was kind of awkward on some of them, listening to some of those older recordings when we were still rank amateurs, as opposed to the slightly less rank amateurs that we are now.
Yeah, now we're experts. We're so good at this. I'm Joe Rogan.
Oh, wait. I don't know if that's... Oh, maybe.
I've been telling everybody lately that I have frat boy energy, and that's how I feel.
Oh,
I'm just
Lord.
throwing pickup lines at my
no.
female friends. I'm so sorry.
No.
I'm morphing.
Michelle,
I'm an anamorph, but into a bro.
All of a sudden, we might not have a podcast anymore, you guys. No,
Okay,
I'm
bye,
kidding.
everyone.
So yeah, we put out an episode every single day. We actually did 33 episodes in 32 days, if you count Sissy at the end of September, which of course we do, because that's how counting works. It was a lot of stuff, and you guys kept coming back and kept listening, and we really, really appreciate it. We're back to just the normal schedule now. The normal schedule of what, Michelle? Maybe somebody's tuning in for the first time. What's this show all about?
Well, we watch Shudder.
Yeah, it's like it was right there in the name or something, right?
I know. If you're not familiar with Shudder, it's basically Netflix, but horror, and it is awesome because there was nothing like this before, where we just had a platform for horror, and now we do, and horror adjacent, as we have to clarify because of some of the things on that site. They're very strange.
Yeah, there are some really there's some unique things that goes on there, but yeah, we they put out a whole bunch of new stuff on a regular basis, and we watch it and talk about it like a couple of real so-and-sos. Yep.
Yeah, we're so-and-sos. Welcome to our show and show.
Big post-October energy right now. Man, we're just like, wow.
I got all sorts of energy. I'm ready. Let's go.
Oh, well,
I can
we
do
are...
a keg stand with my bro energy.
Well, all right then, Michelle, let's get to it. What are we talking about today?
Well, they thought we were going to talk about Satan's Slave Communion, which is a sequel to Satan's Slaves, the Not Communion. But, surprise, we're talking about both. We're talking about Satan's Slaves first.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I had actually never seen the original Satan's Slaves, or had not yet seen. It has been on my radar for quite some time, and I've seen a couple other Joko Anwar films, but I hadn't made it to Satan's Slaves yet. Michelle had seen it, but it had been a real long time since she saw it. So we decided we were just going to go ahead and watch both of these films and talk about both of them here on the podcast. So we're going to start today. Double feature episode. Yay!
Bow, bow, bow.
We're going to start talking about from 2017... Satan's Slaves. Michelle, would you like to read to these good people the description of Satan's Slaves from the Shudder website?
I would love to, JD.
Yay! What does it say?
The Shudder description. When a famous singer dies from a mysterious illness, her family feels her presence linger and a horrifying saga begins. Renee and her siblings care for their sick mother in the countryside, but after the matriarch passes away, evil entities terrorize and even possess the family. To protect her little brothers, Renee traces back the roots of the evil and learns the horrifying truth. A Shudder original.
Woo-hoo.
JD, would you like to give your spoiler-free thoughts on Satan's
I
Slaves?
sure would love to give you my spoiler-free thoughts on Satan's Slaves, written and directed by Joko Anwar. This movie is... it's kind of a ghost movie and kind of a zombie movie and kind of a bunch of other things. It's kind of way too long. Could have been about a half an hour shorter. Ultimately, it's not really my flavor to begin with, and I feel like it just I never really connected with it, and it goes on too long. And this is I'm gonna give this one a 2 skulls, because I mean, it definitely has some qualities that I enjoyed, but overall, this one just was not for me.
So, 2 stars from JD.
That's
I
two
am kind of
skulls,
in this, or
Michelle.
2 skulls.
Two
I'm
skulls.
so sorry.
Get with the
Fired.
program.
I know, my bad. Like we said, we're amateurs. We don't know what we're doing. What is our score system?
Oh, Lord.
So 2 skulls out of 5 skulls from JD.
Yep.
I'm going to give this a little higher score than you did. The first one, first off, the reason we're doing it this way is you pretty much have to see the first movie to know what's going on in the sequel. But I've seen this movie twice, and I'm still not completely sure how the evil entities work, because there's a mention of jinn, but there's also a mention of zombies, but there's also a mention of demons. So it's kind of a new thing that I just couldn't fully wrap my head around. I didn't care very much about the story in the first one. It got a little convoluted for me, but I thought the scares were solid. I really like the camera work. The acting is great. It's got all the elements that I like, aside from being just a little bit confused about what is going on in this movie. So I will actually give the first one a 3.5 skull rating.
Ooh. 2 skulls from me, 3.5 from Michelle. That's 2.75 skull average. For
Wow,
Satan's
math.
Slaves, Joko Anwar from 2017. So, as we do, that's the non-spoiler part. If you have not seen Satan's Slaves and you don't want anything spoiled about that movie, you probably are going to want to, in a moment here, not right now, but in a moment, you're going to want, we're going to keep belaboring that bit all the way into November, guys. No, we're going to get into a spoiler section here, so if you do want to see the movie before we spoil some things, you're going to want to press the pause and then come back and listen to the rest of the episode, so do that right now. Michelle? Tell me a little bit about Satan's Slaves, and let's start here. Tell me about some of the things you loved about this movie.
That little boy is creepy AF.
Oh, the youngest one, Ian?
Yeah, the one doing his little laugh, talking about his friends and just walking creepily out of the room. Oh my God. So spooky. One of the things that they do really well in this movie, and that they do even better in Communion, at least this technique, is the way that
we'll talk about Communion later.
I know, but I just got to point out, we're gonna fight. We're gonna fight. Throw down.
We haven't done one of these in 5 days.
Apparently,
we totally
you've forgotten
recorded
how
one
it
a day all month long in October. Anyway,
we absolutely did. Yes. So I like the way that Joko Anwar uses the camera to follow along with the character and then look where they're looking, so you get that perspective, and then that gives him the ability to, when you look back, see whatever it was. And he's very good at getting your focus to go wherever he wants it to be, and also making it feel like you're in the scene with him. And there's a lot of those techniques, like those bell ringings that are kind of in the beginning, where you're like, oh, well, she's going to be over there because we just saw this, and now she's not. Now you get a scare afterwards. I thought that was just amazing, and I love how he uses that consistently throughout this movie.
I don't disagree with you. It has some very well executed what Alfred Hitchcock referred to as, I believe, the pure cinema technique, which is where it shows you the character looking at something, and then it shows you the thing they're looking at, and then it shows you their reaction to that thing. And it does really good, it's really skillful at, sort of that back and forth cutting, where you just know from the way they start playing into it that on one of these cuts, something's going to happen. And it's a matter of, like, where is it going to happen? What's that sort of really elementary, just straightforward, startled, jump scare kind of technique. It does that really well. And then it keeps doing that. for 2 hours. There are so many, like, there are just so many of those moments in this movie. They just keep happening over and over and over, to the point that by the time we were like a half an hour into this movie, I was already ready for it to be done. Like, there's just so much that happens here, and it goes on for so long. I feel like we could have had half as many of those moments, trimmed a bunch of that fat off this movie, and gotten through it with a healthier clip, a better pace. I was just so bored by the end of this movie because it takes so long to do anything.
That's fair. I found that the big scares in this movie were pretty unique from each other, so I didn't feel that way. Like the one where they're walking through the hall and he throws the sheet, and then there's the human form there, and then that isn't. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it's not like the jump scare that it was very like, oh god, this like moment before they scare, or the moment where she's praying and gets like caught in I don't know what her attire is called, but then she's kind of like trying to fight this sheet to get out of it.
Yeah.
I thought those bigger moments were so different from one another that I didn't mind that there were some jump scares in between. And I think the bell part was just so well executed that when they did lesser versions of it later on in the movie, I was like, okay, this is fine. I forgive them.
Well, and I think even with some of those bigger moments, like, I guess there's just so much of this movie where it's like, and not in just this movie, but in the sequel, which we'll talk about as well.
Oh, JD, we're going to talk about communion. You can't talk about it yet. How does it feel?
Oh, I hate you. No, I'm kidding. It's like the camera like whip pans back and forth, like it's a handheld camera, and it's like whipping back and forth. Or it'd be like cutting from one angle to another and back and forth, to the point where it's like, there might be something like, oh, something might be popping up behind somebody all of a sudden, or somebody, all of a sudden we cut back to the other angle and something was there that wasn't there before. There's just, it got to, I was watching this movie, actually with my friend Kevin while he was here in town for Halloween weekend, and it got to a point where it became like a running joke between us, where it was like, oh, I bet there's gonna be a scary lady back there. There's just so much of that. I do agree with you, because like I said, there are things in this movie that I thought were really well done, and even those moments are well done. There's just too damn many of them. The bit with the sheet, where they throw the sheet and it goes over the ghost and just hangs there. I love that. I've seen a variety of different versions of that gag, and I still don't have any fucking idea how they do it. And it's one of the coolest gags in movies. There's a variation on it in Paranormal Activity 3, but it's in reverse. There's like the ghost, and then the sheet just drops. Like that one maybe is a little bit easier to do, but I did love that movie, or that moment. It does bring me to mind, though, there's that creepy photo or painting or whatever it is at the end of that hallway, right? I feel like this movie missed a glorious opportunity. I every time we got that shot down the hallway with that picture in the back, I was like, one of these times it's going to cut to that picture in the back, and that lady in the picture is going to start moving. And that never happened. And I was really disappointed in that. But no, I did have one moment where I was like, oh, fuck, yes. I bet you can guess when that moment was, Michelle. What do you think it was?
The part
Think
where
real
the
hard
lady
about
in the
this movie
painting
and things that happened
moving.
that were unique in this movie. And the kind of things that I like.
Is there body horror in this?
Well, I mean, the guy's head gets crushed by a truck and dragged along the street.
Oh, that's your favorite part?
I love that moment. And not just because it's splattery fucking awesome. Like, and you know me, I love splatter. But yes, it's abrupt And also, it's unique. It's the only moment like that in the entire film. And, like, to me, by the time we got to it, because it's like an hour and a half into what is almost a 2-hour movie, it was just like, oh, fuck, finally something different. Is this movie going to start getting... And then, no, it just goes back to the ghosts and again, to be fair, guys, we already know that ghosty stuff is not typically my thing. Also, I much like you mentioned earlier, there were some things that I was very confused on. I was like, are they ghosts? Are they zombies? Like, what exactly is happening here? Talk a little more about that from your perspective.
Yeah, so I do wonder if maybe it's partially a lost in translation thing, because one thing that they mention is jinn, and jinn is not something that we discuss very often in America. So I wonder if this style of entity is something that is way more common in Indonesia, so they don't explain it, and therefore I don't understand it very well.
It absolutely is, and that's a thing that this movie taught me. It's called, well, not the movie, but I had to look it up. Let me see here. It's called a pocong, Pocong. That is a Javanese ghost that is said to be the soul of a dead person trapped in their burial shroud.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's very much an Indonesian cultural thing that didn't translate well. And I thought it was very interesting that you mentioned that because, yeah, I figured that out when I did. Because much like you, I was actually so confused about what really was going on in this movie by the time I got to the end of it. To be fair, in part because I was so disconnected that I wasn't paying the closest of attention. But I did have to go back and read some plot breakdowns to make sure I fully understood what was going on. And that's when I learned about the Pocong. And I thought that was super interesting, and something that I'm definitely going to be looking further into now is Indonesian folklore and that sort of stuff, because I thought that was a unique kind of concept. But yeah, overall, this movie is just not really my flavor to begin with, and then there's just so much of it. I did think, I liked the design of the old lady. I thought the bits with the bell all of that was well done. There was just way more of it than I needed.
Yeah. No, I think it's a pretty standard ghost movie, but as we have learned, I like ghost movies. You don't,
definitely
so it's
like
not
ghost
surprising.
movies more than I do. That's actually
and
something...
I'm not... What was that?
Something that, as we were listening through the Spooktober episodes... there were moments where I was like, man, does JD even actually like horror movies at all? like you go, like the number of times where I say, this kind of movie isn't really my speed, but the ones I really like. I say that about a lot of different kinds of horror movies. And then there's like, oh no, this isn't my thing. This isn't my thing. What is my thing? Well, I don't know. But anyway.
I do think I kind of had that same thought while I was listening to it, actually. But I think part of it is we are reviewing a very specific Shudder exclusives and originals, which is a certain level of production value and maybe indie stuff where it's a little harder to get into sometimes compared to the really big budget stuff. I mean, Paranormal Activity costs no money to make, and that was gold. So
I think,
not always true.
Right. I think I'm just a cranky old man.
Well,
but
that's fair too. I did watch a Zero Skull movie in October, though, so I've realized, nope, I have not seen anything that bad on Shudder yet.
Oh, man.
So I definitely...
I'm going to have to talk to you about that.
It was really bad, and I feel bad saying the name, so I won't, because it was clearly a family project where and no, it was not the Addams Family, which did a great job with Hellbender, but it was like that if Hellbender was made by people who I did not like at all.
Oh, wow. So, okay, well, we'll talk about that off the radar here, because I'm curious what that is.
It was awful.
So also the story of this, a big part of again why I thought it was just too damn long is so much stuff. Just the first hour and a half of this is like so dragged out and so much repetition of concepts and moments. And then they jam so much shit and so much story into the last half hour of this movie that I think that also contributed to why I was so frickin' confused by everything. Because it's like all of a sudden there's like this devil cult and you can just, they'll help you have kids and you can keep having as many kids as you want, but the last one you got to give away after it's 7 years old. And they just add, and then there's this beautiful twist in the script where, as it turns out, they find this article, right, that tells them all about what's going on with this cult, and then the way they there's a twist in it towards the end because they get a letter in the mail and it's or whatever, and it's that same article, but then it's like the revised edition, and it's like, oh shit, we didn't have all the facts. I thought that was kind of, I don't know, something about, oh, the revised edition, what a blunder. I found that rather amusing, but yeah, just overall, not a terrible movie. If you're into this sort of thing, you'll probably dig it. It's like Joko Anwar is like the James Wan of Indonesia, and so if you're into that sort of thing, you probably dig this.
I am into that sort of thing, and that is a good comparison.
Absolutely. Anything else to say about Satan's Slaves 1, Michelle?
No, I think that covers everything I had to say about it, especially because I did not know we were covering it, so I did not make any notes.
Hey, perfect. Well, guys, that's the end of the episode. I hope you had a good time with us here this week. Make sure you tune in again next time. We are on all the social medias, TikTok, even. Apparently, Michelle's got some ideas. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at We Watch Shudder. All your favorite podcasting platforms. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Tell all your friends about us. Did I hit all the important details, Michelle?
I think so. I think
perfect. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Oh, that was a funny bit we just did right there, right? Where we were like, oh, they totally forgot to do the other.
So
no, we didn't. Oh, we amuse ourselves. So now we're going to talk about Satan's Slaves. I don't know. I've seen it a couple of different ways, Michelle. Are you just going with Satan's Slaves Communion, or are you putting the 2 in there? Satan's Slaves 2 Communion.
I'm going with Satan's Slaves Communion. I don't like, if you can avoid putting a number in a sequel, that's my preference. So, and I hadn't seen it as Satan's Slaves 2 Communion, but I don't like Satan's Slaves 2. I like just Satan's Slaves Communion.
All right, I'm with it. So preference. Satan's, that's, well, for what it's worth, that's how Shudder labels it, is Satan's Slaves Communion. And they're right. Mm-hmm. The follow-up, 5 years later to Satan's Slaves, as it turns out, also written and directed by Joko Anwar. Everybody already knows how this works. Michelle, this time I will read the description of the film from the Shudder website. Here we go. Satan's Slaves Communion. 4 years ago, I don't know. Wait a minute. We got to stop right there. This is 2022, and that first one was 2017. That's definitely 5 years, but okay. 4 years ago, Rini's dead mother returned and took away her youngest brother. Now she lives with her surviving siblings and their father in a crowded, cheap apartment, thinking it's safer. But when a heavy storm hits, an unseen menace creeps in, and Rini suddenly finds herself in a life-and-death struggle to save her family and get out of the building alive. Modern master of horror Joko Anwar returns with the terrifying sequel to Shudder hit Satan's Slaves, a Shudder original. Michelle.
Yep.
Would you pop off with them spoiler-free thoughts, huh? I don't know why I said it like that. That's,
I will pop off with my spoiler-free thoughts.
No, that's spoiler.
Spoiler. I'm so sorry. I really like Satan's Slaves Communion. I did check out with the story a little bit, but I think that's also because I had just watched Satan's Slaves the original, and I had checked out with that story, so I went into this expecting a standard ghost movie like the first one was, expecting kind of a convoluted story. So honestly, I went into it with pretty low expectations, and then all of a sudden something happens and I went, oh, this is much, much better. I really enjoyed it.
Oh.
I will watch it again because now I am very interested in the story and I have to go back and figure out what I missed. I'm giving it a 4.5.
Wow, 4.5 skulls from Michelle on Satan's Slaves Communion. A full skull improvement over the original Satan's Slaves. I also feel like this is a better film overall than the original was. I do still feel like it's too damn long. I do still feel like they get kind of they could use an editor. There's about a half an hour too much movie here, right? But there were definitely more moments in this movie that really played to my liking than in the first. I feel like there's more story here, and it's an easier to follow story than in the first one. That might be because I had just seen the first one, so maybe that helped a little bit. I'm not sure. But I do feel this is overall a better film than the original, and much like you, I am giving it a full skull above the first one. I'm going with 3 skulls on Satan's Slaves Communion, keeping in mind that my skull ratings are very much based on my personal experience with the movie, and as we've already said, ghost stories, things like this are always kind of a crapshoot with me. So for me, it's a 3 skull experience, but definitely a better film than the original.
Awesome. I did not expect us to both go up 1 skull rating, so that brings it to an average of 3.75. Well, I guess if you don't want to hear this movie get spoiled, I mean, you probably went and watched both Satan's Slaves and Satan's Slaves Communion when we told you to pause 20 minutes ago. If you only
Did they? That would have
listened to
been
Satan's
4
Slaves-
hours of their life, Michelle.
Yeah, why wouldn't they? That's what I would do. I would stop everything and
because
do
I
4
will
hours
admit,
of movies.
I will admit right away that there's 4 hours of movie between these 2 movies, and it took me 5 viewing sessions to watch both of them. So
Yeah, so it's a while later that they came back to the podcast. That's not surprising.
Fair enough.
Hello, it's been a week. How was your week? How are you doing? I hope you had a good time at work. I hope you got that promotion in the last 5 days that you were hoping for.
For the one of you who maybe came back and listened to the spoiler section on Satan's Slaves and then heard this bit and still need to see Satan's Slaves Communion, now's when you're going to want to do that pause thing. All right. Michelle, there's something you said there, and I want to get right to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I keep getting carried away here. You like to, because as you mentioned, we do have a lot of people who listen to this podcast, or at least a few, not because they're horror movie fans, but because they're Michelle and JD fans. That's a little creepy and weird, but I'll take it.
I love that.
Why don't you give them the breakdown on the sequel, Satan's Slaves Communion?
Yes. So at the end of Satan's Slaves, all the children survive except for the very youngest brother. He goes missing. So the children and the father move into this very dilapidated concrete apartment. I thought it was a business warehouse, but no, people live here, and they live in a very small place.
Quick translation for some of you out there, it's a project.
Oh, okay. Yes, it definitely is a home improvement project if I have ever seen one before.
No, I mean it's a housing
No,
project.
I know exactly. I know.
Oh, okay, I see. You were trying to make a joke there, and I totally stepped all over your joke because I'm a dummy. This is what happens when I pick up the microphone too soon. Keep talking.
So anyway, they are in a building that TLC or HGTV would love to get their hands on. They would come in there and be like, this needs an accent wall or 5. So definitely needs some improvement. But they live there with a bunch of other families. And kind of the same stuff from the first one starts happening of like demon zombie things. But that's because there is a part partially through this movie where things get crazy because an elevator falls and crushes a bunch of little girls and like 12 people in the elevator die. So basically like half the residents just died, and now there's a crazy storm and it's flooding and all these dead people are stuck in the apartment, so they're laid in their attire, I forgot what the word is, but for like doing the rites and stuff, and they're all in their own individual apartments, so all these people are just stuck with all these corpses next door, and then they have to go check on the corpses to make sure that they're okay, and things get wild, y'all.
Yeah. Man. This movie is definitely I mentioned how my favorite overall moment in the original film was when that fella gets his face crushed and dragged along the street by the truck, for a couple of reasons, both because I love splatter and because it was so unique as a scene in that movie. And clearly they got some feedback about how people really loved the hell out of that, because, oh man, did they amp up the splatter in this movie compared to Satan's Slaves. It still has all the ghosty bits, all the pokong sort of weird ghosty things. But yeah, there are, especially in the last 20 minutes or so of the movie, it really gets kind of, and as you said, that elevator sequence, man, I I do get a little when you start messing with kids and stuff, I get a little, but oh man, that's so well done. And frankly, the one little girl standing outside the elevator who just gets soaked in gore when the elevator crashes, like that moment goes into just enough of a level of absurdity that I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that whole elevator sequence, as an individual set piece on its own, is one of the best sort of action horror sequences. Not action horror, it's a thriller sequence, right? That becomes a horror moment. But it's so well done. I really enjoyed that whole bit of the film. Once again, I feel like this movie does get long in the tooth. I think it could have been, there were just a lot of things that could have been trimmed down, or things that were just more repetition of just like, oh, let's have another scary moment, for not adding anything to the plot so much, but let's just put more scary moments in here. And I could do without a bit of that. It could have been a half an hour longer, or shorter rather. Oh my God, no. But the kid gets those spikes through his throat towards the end there. That was fucked up. They got that suitcase full of fingers. Like, what the shit is that? Then that dude
I thought they were dicks. I really thought they were dicks, not fingers at first.
And
I was like, oh no.
No, they're fingers.
Either way, it's bad.
And then, like, as if it hasn't been fucked up enough, then we build up to this wild sequence where a dude gets drawn and quartered by demon horses.
Yep.
What the fuck, man? So yeah,
this movie is actually 8 minutes longer than the first one, but I didn't think it felt longer to me. I think the opening was still pretty slow, and that's why I went into this with like, oh, this is going to be kind of like another dreary ghost movie. But once it gets going, it gets really going, and I never felt like it. I felt the slower moments were suspenseful, and so that suspenseful. And I was completely so involved that I didn't care that it was taking forever to finish. This one's longer but felt shorter to me. I love this.
It felt about exactly 8 minutes longer to me, but that's just how it goes. I liked. I really liked that opening sequence of this movie that takes place back in 1955. And when they get to that church, just that sequence where they go inside, or not the church, but the observatory. And they go inside, and there are all those corpses, like in a weird sort of ritual pose. just all in there. It's obviously not a scare moment, but I thought that was a real just eerie, creepy, well done thing. I thought there were moments. Overall, I thought the zombie effects were better here and used in better fashion. There's a moment later in the movie when one of the kids is, when he's going around checking out the apartments where the corpses are, and he's standing there and there's flashes of light. So again, it's more of that. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, these lights are flashing, and we know one time when they flash, there's going to be a thing that happened. There's so much of that again. But there's one where the lights flash and like the corpse heads are now like turning and fucking grinning at him, and I was like, wow, that got me. That was really well done. I thought the corpse faces, that whole effect group was really well done. But again, the story was easier to follow, but also was still just like it still felt so random, and then everything just ends, and there's this, like, the only reason any of it ultimately makes sense is because they tack on this like little monologue from the dude from the opening of the movie, who's been missing for the entire movie, by the way, and he just explains
took too long
everything.
to get there.
And yeah, so he shows up, he shoots some of the bad guys, and then they escape in a boat. And he's like, "Oh yeah, your dad was the sniper who had killed 1,000. Their dad killed 1,000 people. Seriously, come on."
He was. I
would sooner believe that Satan was real and impregnated an Indonesian lady than some random dude managed to sniper murder 1,000 people in a little more than 4 years.
Well, they didn't say that he only killed people using sniping techniques, so maybe like the Sims counted.
No, there's actually there's a scene in
out.
the movie where they mention that the sniper has now killed 1,000 people.
They said that?
Yeah,
was that earlier?
It was in like one of the news reports. Yes, the sniper had killed 1,000 people.
That's so difficult. I mean, maybe he wasn't doing it. I mean, he is the
Killing
sniper,
1,000
but maybe
people by any multitude of methods, like that's just a volume of murder that's unheard of, especially again in a 4-year span. And he's just been living here in this place that's I think, where is it, just outside of Jakarta, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's where they put the location that they mentioned.
Right. So yeah, there are just bits and pieces of the story that where I was just like, oh, come on, man, is very incredulous. But
maybe he was playing The Sims. Like I said, he's the sniper, but it doesn't say he sniped 1,000 people. It says the sniper killed 1,000 people. So he was just playing The Sims and taking the ladder out of the pool and letting them drown, and that counted. And Satan was like, you found my loophole. And that's why Satan's so mad at these kids now, because he's like, your dad figured out The Sims, and it's the 80s, and that hasn't even been invented yet.
I don't know why I totally forgot about it and what it was you just said that made me remember it, but probably I thought just as fucking intense in its own way as the elevator smashing those 3 little girls was when the other main chick is in that weird shaft, and then she like slips down and like
gonna mention
fucking breaks in half on the way down, and her legs fold up around her head. Fuck.
Yep. My favorite death from this, and like partway through I went, damn it, I wish I had just been writing down every time something bad happens to a person, because it just keeps happening and I love it, and each one is like, what? Are you kidding me? But my favorite is actually the little girl who survived the elevator falling, then walks into the elevator and then stands there for a while before then falling to her death. That was crazy. It's
that
like,
was really
you
well
survived
done.
That's like a final Destination thing of like the elevator was gonna have you one way or another. I hate elevators, by the way. That elevator looked like the last job that I had, the elevator of that building, because it was a nonprofit, so not like a super high classy establishment. And when I saw that, I went like, oh God, I'm so glad I don't still work there and I'm watching this movie, because I don't like elevators, and that looked just like the one at my last job.
Yeah, also with regard to that, I thought that whole subplot was some of the best stuff in here. Even the sequence towards the end where she's being haunted down that hallway by the little girl's ghost corpses. Again, it's that same technique of, she lights a match and all of a sudden there's a lot of light, and then the match goes out. And sort of over and over, it gets bright and then it's dark, and you know something's going to happen when the bright, and it happens, but it is really, really, really well done. I thought overall there was a lot more uniqueness and a lot more variety of things going on in this film than were going on in the first one. It still has way too much going on for my liking. But yeah, this is definitely a much more mature and varied film, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I really like it. I think if you're going to watch it and you now sat through 2 movies being spoiled and haven't watched either and still want to, you're going to have to watch the first one, though, because otherwise you're going to be even more confused. But I like this, and I do plan on revisiting it now that I'm like, okay, I just got to buckle down and figure out this plot and just
you're definitely
you're
definitely going to have to revisit it, because very obviously there's going to be a third one. I mean, the way this ended, it was very clear. They were like, "Oh yeah, we're coming back for movie number 3." I am definitely curious what the scoop is on that creepy couple who appeared at the end of both movies. That is one of the few overall story moments that's going on here where I'm like, all right, you got me. I'm curious to see where that is going. The little bit of the Shining sort of homage with the photo editing there at the end. Maybe the effects could have been a little better, but appreciated that. I get what they're doing there. Very curious to see where this is all going, and hopefully the third film continues to improve in the same way that the second one I feel improved on the first one, and definitely a thumbs up overall.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention about this movie before we close off the episode, this was the first movie made in IMAX and released in IMAX in Indonesia, and I just think that's so interesting that this is the first movie that people who have never seen IMAX are going to go into, and they're probably going to like shit themselves.
Yeah. Especially that elevator sequence, so that girl getting just soaked in gore on IMAX. Oh, Jesus. Yeah,
so I thought that was very fun that they're going to be like, oh, I get to experience IMAX. Oh, no, I never want to experience IMAX again, because this is the one that you get to do that with. But I also think it's really cool that Indonesia's and like Joko Anwar is making such like a big successful name for the country, because between these 2 movies, Impetigore, he's putting a lot of stuff on the map.
Is it Impetigore or is it Impetigore?
Oh my God, I've always said Impetigore, but I've also only read it.
See, I went with Impetigore because I assumed it was a play on the disease or the condition. I'm not sure exactly, but it's a thing called impetigo.
Yep, impetigo. I didn't even make that connection.
Oh,
interesting.
Okay. Yeah,
well, I don't know.
Yeah, between Joko Anwar and Timo Tjahjanto, Indonesia is doing some really making a name for themselves in the horror community. Now, if we could just get Sam and Craig and the team over at Shudder to dig down deep into their pockets and bring to the masses a brilliant little gem called Mystics in Bali. Man, my life would be just the peachiest it's ever been. You ever seen that movie, Michelle? You probably don't even know that movie exists, Michelle. Mystics in Bali. It's a movie
Of course,
from
it's a movie from the
Bali.
80s. Of
Yeah,
course.
it's from 1981, I think.
You
I
just
learned
don't
of
like modern horror movies. When
I
you
learned
were
of
like, I don't know if I like
mystics-
horror.
I learned of mystics in Bali courtesy of a sample in a song from a surf thrash band called the Necronomicids. That's right, the Necronomicids. And man, that movie is a trip, and it actually reminds me a lot of the original Satan's Slave. We didn't even talk about that. This Satan's Slaves Communion is the sequel to Satan's Slaves, which is, in fact, kind of, I guess, like a partial remake, partial prequel in a way to a 1980 Indonesian film called Satan's Slave. I watched the first half hour or so of it, and then I fell asleep because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning and I got way too ambitious. But that's why I brought up Mystics in Bali, is because it reminded me a lot of the original Satan's Slaves, and I was like, man, it'd be cool if Shudder got Mystics in Bali on there. That was a whole tangent about Mystics in Bali that I had no idea I was going to do, and we should probably let these people go to bed or whatever it is they're going to do, right?
Well, I'm going to go watch Mystics in Bali, which I'm probably going to hate.
I'm pretty sure you can find it on YouTube in its completeness. It's not a really good like transfer or anything. Come on, Craig, Sam, get some people to do a 4K restore. Maybe get some of them. It was the Severin films, or maybe who else? Why am I blanking? Maybe Bloody Disgusting will do it. I don't know. Somebody. Dread
Can't mention
Central.
that on our Shudder podcast.
Screambox. All the competent.
We'll go wherever Mystics in Bali goes.
Michelle, Dread Central co-produced VHS 99 with Shudder. It's fine.
I know.
It's fine.
Everybody in the horror community is
anyway,
just
guys.
love horror.
Go check out Mystics in Bali on YouTube. Go check out Satan's Slaves and Satan's Slaves Communion on Shudder and all the other Shudder things. It's the end of the new episode. Don't forget to check us out on all the social medias at We Watch Shudder, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We're everywhere. Did I get it all?
Yeah, no, you absolutely did.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
I'm working on a TikTok, and someday I will be brave enough to upload it. So we'll actually start having TikTok content. And no, it is not dances. I am actually going to do something that people might like. We'll see. I'm working on it. There's some video production involved.
Clever. How many horror movies did you say you managed to watch in October, Michelle?
Specifically horror or horror adjacent. In October, I watched 74. There were definitely some non-horror movie things on my list because I ran out of horror on streaming sites and I didn't feel like paying to rent a lot of them. And then I also had to pay attention to the entire 3-week Daryl Brooks trial, and that took up a lot of time and was definitely worth the time to watch. So
I would like to, in case you missed it, 74 movies, and
I'm a little disappointed.
She's got a whole list of. You're disappointed in 74 movies.
I seriously thought I was going to hit 100 for Spooktober, but I ran out of movies.
She's gonna post a list on the social medias.
I will.
Keep an eye out for it. I promise you, this woman watches more movies than you do. Anyway, guys, we've completely lost the thread, and this is just what this podcast is going to be now, because October 2022 broke our minds with all the intense podcasting horror that we were subjected to.
We'll get back to it.
We will. Say
we'll
goodnight,
hit our
Michelle.
stride. Yeah. Good night, Michelle.